School Board's work session scheduled for today, Tuesday, April 7th, 2026, for the purpose of discussing Policy JIC, Code of Student Conduct. Public will not have an opportunity to participate in this morning's work session to provide public comment because this is not a regularly scheduled school board meeting. No action will be taken, and there'll be no open public comment period during which the public would normally be able to address the board on relevant topics. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. As a reminder, board members will not be engaging in outside electronic or digital communication during the meeting so that we can focus our full attention on the matters before us. To my fellow board members and district staff, when speaking, please speak directly into your microphone. Make sure it is turned on so that our YouTube and Orange TV viewers can hear you clearly. And now we will rise for a moment of silence, and then I invite you to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And now for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to count the number of meetings I have left. See if I have a chance of getting everybody on board. We'll see. All right. Dr. Vasquez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This morning, we have our team that is going to be presenting our proposed revisions for the Code of Conduct. I do want to interject a comment related to dress code. As you know, I have been attending middle school town halls, and dress code has been a topic on many of those conversations. I've also spoken with staff related to the comments board members have had about changes to the dress code. We have made minimal changes. By that I mean many, but I do think that there's one particular item or change that we've made that I think is going to impact a lot of our schools and bring more consistency. And while my initial thoughts around the dress code was much more drastic than what you are seeing today. In speaking with staff, some of those changes really would create problems because of what the interpretation of those changes could elicit. And so I'm curious, once you see the proposed changes, any conversations you have on any of it, but I do know that the dress code is something that has been a topic of conversation at the middle schools we visited. So with that, I will turn it over to Demiki. Oh, go ahead.
Before doing so, Superintendent, when you started your comments, I thought that perhaps since we're talking about dress code, that you were going to explain why you and I and several of the board members, I think most of us, are wearing denim, which is not something that the public would generally see. And since it's somewhat ironic that we are talking dress code, I thought I would take just a brief moment for anybody who might be watching us live or at some point in the future. So as we speak, this is National Denim Day, and National Denim Day is set aside as a day of awareness of discrimination against women. And I won't go into the long detail of it, but it goes back to a case somewhere in Europe where a judge decided that a woman who had been sexually assaulted was found guilty, or at least the perpetrator was found innocent because the woman was wearing jeans. So in honor of, in I guess, solidarity with that woman and recognizing that women should be able to wear what they want, you see us, several of us, actually most of us, you can't see, that they're wearing jean pants or jean jackets. And it seems apropos that we are talking about dress code right now. So with that, you're now recognized. Thank you.
Instructions. Can you hear me?
You know,
No.
it's not just a matter of having turned on these mics. You just about you have to just about
Okay. Is that
be
better?
touching them. So
Okay.
much better. Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you. So to begin with introductions, at the end of the table, we have our staff attorney over discipline, Alkivia Haynes, excuse me. We have our director of discipline, Demiki Joyner, and my name is Delilah Hernandez, and I am an area administrator. Good morning, Superintendent Vasquez, Chair Jacobs, and members of the school board. We are here to present our proposed revisions for the 2026-2027 Code of Student Conduct. To inform these revisions, we conducted targeted surveys, interviews, and met with students, teachers, parents, the superintendent's cabinet, and school board members to gather input and identify needs and strengths. More than 60% of teachers indicated that school administration effectively communicates discipline procedures to both teachers and students. Survey results revealed slightly more than half of respondents were parents of elementary students, with a balanced representation of middle and high school families. Engagement is strong. More than 60% reported knowing where to access the Code of Conduct and having reviewed it with their children. Feedback in terms of areas for improvement, greater consistency across schools with the implementation of discipline procedures, greater clarity regarding dress code procedures, and parental awareness regarding safe harbor. Subject to the board's questions and feedback, we are prepared to present our recommended revisions for the 2026-27 school year.
All right, we're going to start on page 1. We're going to update the school year from 26-27. We've added the new vice chair, board member Salamanca. We're going to move the vision, mission, and objectives to the cover page. And also on the cover page, we're going to have graphics. We can go to page 3. On page 3, we've updated the first bullet. Students have the right to choose to participate in an OCPS discipline investigation. Parent guardians can give the school administration a written note before an incident occurs if they do not want their child to be part of the discipline investigation. For students in grades K through 2, school administration will make every attempt to notify parent guardians prior to the student participating in any disciplinary investigation. I'm sorry, also on page 3, under safe harbor, we remove firearms and weapons because it's any object a student can declare safe harbor for. On page 9, under student discipline investigations, again, we've added parents and guardians can give the school administrator a written note before an incident occurs if they do not want their child to be part of a discipline investigation. For students grades K through 2, school administrator will make every attempt to notify parent guardians prior to the student participating in any discipline investigation. All right, if you go to page 10. Page 10 starts our level 1 offenses. Under level 1A, cheating, we've added information regarding AI. This includes the unauthorized use or attempted use of artificial intelligence, AI, systems or other resources to generate content as one's solely original work while failing to properly cite, disclose, or specify the extent of the resources used. Page 14. On page 14, we're going to remove threats, intimidation as a level 2. We're going to replace it with 2A, which is going to be acts of aggression, which is on page 16. We're adding the new offense, acts of aggression. This is going to be an expression of harm towards another person without the intent and capability to carry out the harm. We're adding this because sometimes students express intent to harm somebody without following up. A lot of elementary kids may have outbursts, emotional outbursts, because they're upset, and we used to code that as a level 2 threat, and it's not the intent. They're not making a threat. So we looked at this with our legal representative to say, okay, they're having an emotional outburst. There's no intent to carry through with what they're saying. Also, we've added a level 2B, 2BB, cheating. This is the repeated, willful, or deliberate unauthorized use of the work of another person for academic purposes or unauthorized use of notes or other material in the completion of an academic assignment or test. This includes repeated unauthorized use or attempted use of artificial intelligence, AI, systems or other resources to generate content as one solely or original work, while failing to properly cite, disclose, or specify the extent of the resources used. In addition to disciplinary responses, the student may receive no credit for the assignment, test, or exam at the discretion of the teacher. So we used to only have a level 1 for cheating, but we've added also a level 2, so it could be repeated if it continues to happen. We've also added 2CC, physical aggression. Brief physical contact like pushing or shoving without significant injury or adult intervention. This offense does not include fighting if the student involved are mutual combatants. All right, page 21. Under 3V, harassment, we've added this offense includes but is not limited to pantsing that includes limited exposure. So pantsing means, this is really a middle school thing, they come up behind kids and they pull their pants down and nothing is exposed. It is a form of harassment. The kid is totally embarrassed. So we've added that so parents will know specifically that pantsing comes in harassment, under harassment. Page 22, 3EE, campus security violation. We've added criminal activity or violence. Then it's going to be a level 4T other. This was added at the recommendation of district police, because basically if you allow someone on campus that doesn't belong there, and they're coming on campus to be involved in some type of criminal activity or some type of violence, then we're going to refer that to a level 4T. Page 23. We've also added another offense, 3BB, physical aggression. Repeated brief physical contact, like pushing or shoving, without significant injury or adult intervention. This is a progression from the level 2 offense that we've added. Page 27. "4K, other dangerous objects." We added including 3D created or printed replicas. Page 28. Under 4O, sexual harassment, we've added, but is not limited to, unwanted sexting, sexting that extends beyond the initial sender, receiver, or pantsing that includes exposure of genitals. So before under harassment, it was limited exposure. Under sexual harassment, we added this for clarity if genitals are exposed. Page 29. Under 4Y, simple battery, we're removing immediate first aid or subsequent medical attention. This was deleted as immediate first aid is not required by assessor. Page 30. Under the simplified definition, we've added, for clarification purposes, using an electronic device, we remove computer or tablet. All right, page 33. On page 33, this is where we have procedures for levels 1 through 3. On step 4, we've added the principal designee shall give written notice in writing of each suspension and the reasons for the suspension within 24 business hours to the student's parents by mail or parent square, unless the parent elects to receive notification via U.S. mail. Notification shall be made to the superintendent designee. So this was added because state statute 1006.09, section 1, allows the board to adopt a policy that parents can agree to receive their notifications through an alternative method. So our method is going to be parent square and an email, and we will also still mail the letter home. So there's going to be 3 ways parents can get notification of a discipline offense. On step 6, and this was added for clarity, failure of the parent or guardian to appeal to the principal within 14 calendar days of the first notification of a discipline referral shall be deemed a waiver of any appeal to the discipline offense and consequence. What we did here, we're giving parents more time to appeal to the principal regarding a discipline incident, levels 1 through 3. Page 35. Step 4, level 4 procedures. Again, we've added the same language that we add in steps 1 through 3 regarding parents and the way they can elect to be communicated. Again, it's going to be email, parent square, and they will still receive their letter within 24 hours of a discipline offense. Page 36. Step 7, we've added students are not permitted to enroll in any OCPS school, including Orange County Virtual School or charter school within Orange County until the DTM process is complete. Sometimes we have parents We can be in the middle of an investigation, and they will withdraw their kid, student from the school, trying to avoid the discipline investigation or whatever consequence that may come from that investigation. Step 9, same page, 36. We've also added, if a parent chooses to not accept the alternative placement, the student may not attend or take classes with Orange County Virtual School. Parents can enroll in Florida Virtual School. They can look at, I guess, a private school or a charter school, because what's been happening, we've noticed kids that are assigned to our alternative school, some kids that are fully excluded, they are going into Orange County Virtual School. So we've added that to try to limit their enrollment in Orange County Virtual School when they are assigned to an alternative school or they're fully excluded. Step 13, we've added 2 words, whether, and was provided for clarity. Page 38, it starts our procedures for IDEA. Is Sarah here? All right, at this time, I'm going to turn over to Ms. Hayes to talk about those changes.
Let me ask, would this be a good time to pause and take questions from the board?
Sure.
Okay, let's do that at this stage. Member Gallo, you recognized?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, can we go to BB? It's the one on the AI and the cheating. Over there. Yes, so it says that the student may receive no credit for the assignment, test, or exam at the discretion of the teacher. The no credit conflicts with our 50% rule, so will they get 0 credit for it, or they get credit to 50%?
They will get credit for 50%.
So do we want to be more explicit? Because if I was a teacher and I read, I don't have to give them credit, and they cheated, I wouldn't give them credit.
May I? I need
Dr.
to
Vasquez,
clarify.
you
So
recognized?
I've asked for clarification because my understanding is that the 50% goes into effect at the end of the 9 weeks. It does not apply to individual assignments. So a teacher could give zeros, 15, 30, 45, the actual grade for the individual assignments. It's when at the end of the 9 weeks, we look at the cumulative grade. If it falls below a 50, that we indicate that it is only a 50.
Okay,
Right?
thank you.
So we're
So it doesn't, okay, then, and for that case, it doesn't need to be clarified, because they would just go in as a 0 and then
Correct.
get calculated
Correct.
out.
And what we'll do is we're going to send out clarification because that's come up a couple of
It has.
times. And so, and I've heard comments from the teachers and I've shared that it's only at the end of the 9 weeks. It's not individual assignments.
Okay, perfect. That clears that up. And then on the next BB, which was on physical aggression. It says, the one where it says that when there's no harm done, like it's physical aggression, like a bump or a shove, or you accidentally bump or we shove somebody. If it's like an accidental bump or shove, nobody was hurt. Why would that be like a level 3? Why couldn't that be a lower level? It's a level 2 as well? Oh, so it's both a level 2 and a level 3?
Yes.
And so so it's up to the discipline team at the school to determine if it's,
The level 3 is repeated, so this is the second or the third time this has happened. The first time is the level 2, one time happening.
Okay, okay. And it doesn't have to be to the same student?
No.
Okay. And then on just a clarification, because I think I heard something different than what's written on page 33, step 4, where it says that we're going to, notify them, mail it out within 24 business hours, which is a change, I think, from when we said within 24 hours, right? So 24 business hours would be 3 days? 8, 16, 24? No.
So 24 hours, it comes into play when something happens on Friday. And so there's nobody Saturday or Sunday, so the 24 hours would then go to the following Monday. But if it happens on Monday at 2 o'clock, it has to happen by Tuesday, 2 o'clock.
Yes.
It's only the weekend.
Okay, so I'm wondering if we could just clarify that, say business hours Monday through Friday, only because when I read it, I'm thinking, oh, so now I've got to take business hours, there's 8 hours in a business day, and I'm thinking I need to, okay, that means, so maybe just, that makes more sense. And then it also said, I thought I heard you say district superintendent or their designee, but in that it just says district superintendent.
It does.
So I didn't know if we wanted to add designee to that.
So for that particular one, the state statute requires that it's the superintendent that is notified.
Okay, perfect. And then on step 6, when we're talking about if they don't appeal in 14 days, are there any exceptions for that? Like I'm thinking of foster students, homeless kids that, A, may not have received it or the notification and didn't know. I mean, I want to ensure that it's just not black and white, that there are shades of gray for those students that need it.
You're right, there are shades of gray. If they try to appeal to the principal and the principal is really hard and say you had 14 days, they can always reach out to our office and we will take a look at it.
So how would that be communicated to the parent that they could reach out to the discipline team to look at it if the principal says no?
One of the reasons it was added was because we didn't want families coming back a year later.
Sure.
But I do understand your question, so we will discuss how we would add something so families will know that they can reach out to the discipline office.
Okay.
If the school is saying no.
Okay, perfect. Just so they know. Okay, and then on step 9, if a child is expelled or gets sent for 90 days or whatever to positive pathways, I do know a lot of parents that I've spoken to that their student has gotten in trouble because kids are kids, right? Their frontal lobe's not fully developed. They do stupid things. They don't necessarily want the child in positive pathways because of the connotations of positive pathways. And so I'm curious as to the rationale as to why we wouldn't let them go to OCPS or OCVS, because in light of our budget shortcomings, as long as they're not around other students, they're in their home, they can be educated through OCVS, which at least we know they are being educated, versus if they do homeschooling or go to some private school that's not accredited and take voucher money. I'm trying to understand the rationale on why we wouldn't want them in OCV. Why are we giving Florida Virtual the money versus Orange County Virtual the money? As long as they're not around other kids, I don't see the harm in allowing them to go to OCVS. If they do not choose to go to positive pathways, I would think that should be another choice in our school tool belt.
Madam Chair, may I? So Orange County Virtual School is an OCPS school, so we don't usually allow a student to avoid the consequence of being assigned to positive pathways by allowing them to be assigned to another district school. And there was I think we've had a couple cases where we've had to deal with this year where folks tried to avoid the assignment to positive pathways by going to Orange County Virtual.
No, I understand that, and I'm making the argument that we should allow it. I'm making the argument that we should change that policy because Positive Pathways is an Orange County public school. Orange County Virtual School is an Orange County school. They're separated from kids, so they'd have to be at home. They still wouldn't be allowed on their homeschool campus. Why wouldn't we allow that and offer that as an option as well as Positive Pathways?
I know that in the past, because we don't allow them at any OCPS school, and OCVS is an OCPS school, it's not allowed. We did not want to open the door for someone to come in and say, well, OCVS is a Orange County public school, and you're allowing us to go there. Why can't I go to Boone High School? Or why can't I go to this other Orange County school that is not my zone school? But I'll defer to
So I just to interject, but Positive Pathways is our school too. So in my mind, I'm like, are there options? Could be Orange County Virtual School or Positive Pathway. Those are your only options if you want to remain in Orange County Public Schools. If not, we're giving money to Florida Virtual School. Like, I just don't understand why we would give them the dollars when we have our own virtual school. I mean, wouldn't that just be a change of policy where we could say, okay, here's your two options. We're either going to bus you to Positive Pathways, or you could do Orange County Virtual School. We'll save money on busing. We'll keep the FTE. They're in their home. They're not allowed on campus. They're not allowed to attend anything else that Orange County Public Schools puts on other than OCVS or, Positive. Because when they go to Positive Pathways, they can't do anything else either, but they're both schools. So to me, in my mind, that would be an easy change. It would save money on buses, and we would keep the FTE in an era where budget is really, really tight.
So in my view, this is something that would be a policy change that the board could entertain if they want to do that. We have not done that in the past. We have normally sent students to this is our school, Second Chance School is Positive Pathways. These kids would come on campus for certain things, such as testing.
So testing, they would have to go to Positive Pathways to get tested.
They don't go to, Orange County Virtual students do not go to Positive Pathways.
But could they not? I guess is my question is, could that not be the site where they get tested at?
Yeah.
So, okay, can I ask that this policy be brought before the board for discussion?
I think this is the code of conduct is a policy. It is in front of the board for discussion.
But you said we had to change another policy.
No, I did. If I said that, I misspoke.
Oh.
I apologize. No, you can make this change here. If the board wants to say students would be permitted to attend either Positive Pathways or Orange County Virtual School with testing to occur at Positive Pathways, if you want that language to be put in here, that could be the will of the board there.
Well, I would like to propose that our two alternate sites for expulsion could be Orange County Virtual Schools or Positive Pathways. I just think in the era that we're in, that makes sense. I don't know why we would allow, or, at least they may say no and they may want to go to a private school. That's fine, but at least we're giving them the option of virtual school.
May I?
Dr. Vasquez, yeah.
Thank you. So I need to, we need to look at this. Number one, I believe that OCVS only accepts students at the semester. I could be mistaken. That would be something that we may need to change, whereas Florida Virtual accepts them year-round. Second is sometimes there is a delay in having a teacher for a particular course, and so the child would not have access to instruction right away as they would at Positive Pathways. Yeah, but we definitely can flush out to see what it would take and giving them that option.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Those are my questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Member Faldo, sounds like you have a clarifying question?
Turn your mic on, babe. Turn your mic on. Pull it towards you.
Remember Gala said, I think if if this is a punishment, there need to be positive pathways. I agree with the fact that we should not be allowing them to go to Florida virtual because we have a virtual school in Orange County. But I do understand that, as Superintendent said, that if certain courses that the child is to be taken, and if it's not offered at positive pathways, at Orange County virtual, that might present a problem. But part of this, the reason why they're going to positive pathways is because they're being punished for what, this is a consequence. You do the crime, you got to pay the time. You've done something that's wrong, so you got to take the consequence, and the punishment is positive pathways. And if their parents, if the parents don't want to do it, okay, but I don't think we should make provision for the punishment.
But Member Feller, just make, I was just in case you had a clarification question.
Okay,
but
yeah,
I'll
help
line
me.
you up. You're on cue, but you're way.
I'm
later.
sorry,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry,
No, you're
okay.
good. It was just if it was a quick question for.
Okay, I didn't want you all to start talking about something else, and then I come back to that.
Okay, got
You
it.
got it.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but I can come back on
I
it.
will loop back around to you. It's just to make sure.
All
that
right,
if
thank
it was
you. I'm
specific.
sorry.
No, you're good. Yes, Member Westwood.
I want to seek clarification, and Greg Moody, I hope you're sitting down. Do you also want us to bring back, if that is the only option, OCVS?
Yes. Well, what do you mean by, explain, what do you mean by only option?
Like no
So,
positive pathways.
No, like there is no positive pathways. It
Oh.
would be OCVS.
No, I mean,
Okay.
no, I'm just giving them the choice between the two. Like, I do believe that positive pathways, so for someone who has done something really, okay, I'll give you egregious, like brought a gun to school, threatened somebody for a gun, well, they probably wouldn't even be eligible for positive pathways. But just say something along those lines, and we send them to positive pathways. I think positive pathways is a better match because we do have mental health services there. We are able to help them with counseling, help them continue to learn, and we've seen good results from positive pathways that they don't come back, right? But for instance, for those kids that did something stupid, that threatened a school, had no means to really follow through on that threat, and they get in trouble, I think that Orange County Virtual School would be a better fit for them because they just did something incredibly stupid, and that, especially if it's their first offense. And in that case, their parents would not want them to go to positive pathways because they would believe that their children, that's not a good place for their child. They would then have access to Orange County Virtual Schools.
Yeah, my concern is the opposite. My concern is that when faced with the option of OCVS or positive pathways, they would pick OCVS. And now we're running into the fact that maybe we're not generating the FTE necessary to run positive pathways. So we'll look at both scenarios. But I believe, remember, most of these are secondary students, so middle and high school students, that when given the option, they'll go with the virtual.
Yeah, and I would, as you kind of flesh this out, I would be okay if we even determined like which things would only be like which offenses would be like you'd have to go to positive pathways versus maybe some of the others that are first time offenders, less harmful, but they caused a major disruption. Maybe those were, and they've been a good student. Maybe those would be the ones, okay, we'll offer you. I mean, I don't even mind if we divide it that way, if that makes sense. But just, we do have, especially the way Cessor is written and the laws that we have to abide by and the things that we have to report. I know a lot of times we do get to consider the consequence, but we don't really get to consider what gets put on the paper, because that's state law. So all I'm saying is, where we can, I would rather keep a student that will never go to positive pathways within the Orange County family, because at least then I know that they're learning. I know that we're talking to them. I know that we have eyes on them. We're still getting the funding for them versus them go to a non-accredited private school. I don't even know if a charter school would take them because most of them won't when they get expelled. And so, or go to like homeschooling or something where that child's not learning. and won't be successful later in life. I'm just really thinking of what's best for the student and how do we ensure that after this incident, they will prosper and be successful in their adulthood.
Okay, thank you, Member Gallo. We'll, as we loop around, maybe all board members can just make a quick note on that. If it is a policy change, I think we need to have the numbers for that. I'm up next. I would absolutely be supportive of that. I think that a combination of what we spend on buses plus FT, I think we could be maybe smarter or more better optimized on how we think about it. Maybe it's like Member Gallo said, level 1, level 2. There are certain offenses where it makes sense to do OCVS versus there are some offenses that it's sorry, for the type of level 4. Sorry, that can go there. One of the questions I had was on the juvenile center. So I remember I spent some time with Melissa Vickers about students who maybe are waiting to see a court or something like that. Are these students, like, where are these students? I could say I committed a crime, I have to go to court, it's 90-day wait in court. Am I in positive pathways at this level usually or not really? So juvenile court.
Yeah, they are. There's a juvenile detention center, and they are provided education while they're waiting at the juvenile detention center.
Yeah, I'd be curious to like maybe just better understand what the breakout of our students that are getting level 4 is going. Where do we have a sense like how many of them end up in juvenile center versus positive pathways, or is it really just because some of these are asked.
So they would only go to the juvenile center if they're arrested. So it has to be an arrestable.
But there's some
offense.
level 4s that are arrest worthy, no?
There are some, but
Yeah.
we don't see that very often.
Okay.
Unless it's like a possession of a weapon on campus, then
Right.
they go
I mean,
to.
we have some level 4s that might be there. I'm just curious on what that breakdown is between our level 4s.
So
where
they
students
may
go to
not
after.
have received, if they may not have received their level 4 because the investigation may not be over. So we have to make sure that we give them due process. There are times when kids get arrested and they may not have an opportunity to write a statement or provide witnesses. So as soon as they are released from JDC, they come back to school to receive their referral, and then we have a DTM that happens within 10 days. So being in JDC and having a level 4, they don't necessarily go together.
Got it. Okay. We can spend some time offline. I think I'm generally just a bit, I just need some clarity on the workflow of some of these level 4s. But I would be supportive of some of the stuff that Member Gallo said. So I think it's a smart way to think about the FTE. Okay, for page, I'm pulling it up, the AI component as well. It's the first time I'm trying to think. Yeah, page 10. So what is unauthorized use, or what's attempted use? Like, how are we defining the attempted use of AI? Like, I went to chatgpt.com and it's blocked, but so that's attempted, so that's a level 1. Like, I understand the use of, but I'm just curious what attempted means. Am I being too literal? Does that make sense?
I guess if the teacher caught the kid trying to use AI, that would be an attempted use.
That's a little too gray for my liking, I would say. But I don't know what the example would be. Like as maybe like this teacher saw the student as she was walking around trying to use it.
Yes, or maybe using land school.
So like it hasn't fully been submitted. So this is like pre-submission. It's considered attempted, but post-submission of the assignment, it's not attempted. It's used.
Go ahead.
Okay, that's just.
We'll come back and we'll take a look at it.
Thank you. I attempted is a little in the gray area.
You either
So I don't know
use it
what
or
that
you don't.
means. Therefore, enforcement can be a little complicated there. The other one was on the simplified definition here. It says, or using a computer program to get answers. Everywhere else we say electronic devices, like through the rest of it. So I would just, for consistency, put electronic devices. I don't care how they use it, but it doesn't have to be a computer. Okay, let's see. What was my other one? The attempted is also in level 2 offense, page 16, by the way, for cheating. Okay, and then so physical aggression, this CC on page 16, that starts at level 2. There's not a level 1 version of this, of like a push or a shove. It starts at level 2, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. I'll think about that one. Come back to that. The other one was pantsing. So I noticed that was included. I don't know if maybe we're having a lot of incidents of this. I am of the generation when pantsing was very common in the middle school class locker rooms. Unfortunately, I am the victim of pantsing. Yeah, it was very common in locker rooms.
It is still common.
I've been a victim of pantsing. Yeah. Okay, we have at least 3 board members up here that have been victims of pantsing. I think it's more common than folks think. Level 3 feels a little harsh to me as a starting point. I don't know. Maybe it was.
It's a form of harassment.
No, okay. So that's why, because it's harassment.
Because it's harassment, yes.
Okay. All right. I understand, but it's harsh. But it really was. It was very common when I was in school. Like it was. I know. Yes. Well, no, I understand if you expose things, that should be much higher. So I don't disagree with the progressive component. I think that's absolutely fair. But maybe because of how common it was when I was in school, it's going straight to a level 3. Felt harsh to me, but I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Okay, those are my questions. Thank you. Member Front. Sorry.
I know. I thought you were asking me to chime in on that. It's
No.
like, okay, no. Perfect. Honestly, I think we've kind of covered. I was going to talk on page 9. My only question is just how are we? Okay, it talks about the informing parents. Hold on, if I can find the informing parents that they can ask for it in email or is that page 9? I don't know. I wrote page 9, but now I don't know. Oh, I know what it is. How do we inform parents that they are able to sign the form prior to an incident happening where their kid wouldn't have to do be part of an investigation?
It's in the code, so we're hoping, parents should go over the code with their kids, so it's in the code.
So only there. That's the only time. I would say if there's a way for principals or for the district maybe even to share communication. I say it only because I've had many parents tell me, why was my kid interviewed for an investigation without my knowledge? I had no idea. And then they say, well, then they said the principal or whoever it is that is doing the investigation says, well, you could have done signed a form. And they go, well, how was I supposed to know? And I'll be real honest with you. 98% of our parents are not going line by line reading this code of conduct. It's there so that it's a backup. We can show that we did give it. But I mean, in all honesty, parents are not reading this with their kids.
So we do have a video that we share with parents. I want to say do an open house, but we will come up with other ways to communicate with parents that they can opt out.
Perfect. And maybe just real clear of why you would feel you want to opt out and what is if you do opt your kid out, this is kind of the consequence, not necessarily consequences, but this is.
The
kind of
investigation will still go on even if you opt your child out.
Right, right.
No problem.
Okay, and then it was page 33 and 35. That's where I was thinking about the letter. It's talking about how we're giving them it's automatic that they'll be receiving an email or a parent square. But then do
Yes.
they also get the mail, or that's like they'd have to opt into the mail?
So we've already discussed, reached out to Alicia Leonard, and you know how we have those forms that, the yearbook form and those notifications at the beginning of the school year. We're going to add this one as well, so they would have to, it's going to be defaulted to receiving the parent square or email, but we're still going to give them all three. So to answer your question, either way, they opt in, opt out, they still will get all three communications.
So why
Just so
have
we
the-
would cover all of our bases.
Okay, but let's say, so that if they opt into email, or they're already opted into it, correct?
Right, so they would have to opt into it being sent be USPS. So the default will be email
So my
and
question
parent
is,
square.
so if they just decide to stay with the default, they will not receive a mail?
We're still going to give them mail because we talked
Then
about
why
this.
are we
thing.
doing a default or no default?
Because it was a suggestion made at cabinet that the policy is going to say that they're going to receive it by email or parent square, but we know that there are some parents that may not check their email, may not check parent square, so we're
That's what
still
I'm
going to
afraid of.
give them, have the school send it by USPS as well.
So just having it in the policy just to be there, and then they're checking it, but I don't know. I feel like it seems kind of redundant. Like if they're getting it anyways, and it doesn't matter either way.
If
Do
we
we really
email
need
it to
it?
them, if they opt for the email, they're going to get the notification right away. If they opt for Parent Square, they're going to get it right away. With the mail, it's going to take 24 hours, or I'm not making excuses for schools. Sometimes it may take a day or two before it's put in the mail, but if we opt in for Parent Square or email, they're going to get it right away within less than 24 hours.
I see. So they're just basically opting in or out of if they want email communication, but either way, okay, that makes sense. Okay, and then my only last thing, and I don't know that this is part of the parent, or the Code of Student Conduct, but it really rubs me the wrong way every time I hear the whole thing of the 50% that we give kids. I know that there's a reasoning behind that or whatever, and I don't know if that's just to make sure that kids graduate, but I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to, students that I've talked to, who say they are trying so hard. They do everything that they can, and they're barely squeaking by with a 65 or, a 70, but they're doing their very best. And then they look at the kid next door who's cheating, who's not showing up to class and not doing anything, and they'll get a 50% for the quarter. And we've had teachers, which I know I've brought this up before, and obviously not the standard that we want, but teachers who will say, listen, as long as you get an A your first quarter, you can do whatever you want the other quarters, because at least you'll get 50%. Kids are not dumb. They know this, and that's why a lot of times they're not striving for what's best, because they get a participation trophy. So how do we remove that?
May I, Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
The board would have to, the majority of the board would have to give us direction to change our pupil progression. That was put in at the request of the board many years ago. And the difference is that if a child is getting a 65, that's a D and they're passing. If a child gets a 50, it's an F and they're failing. And for a child who is having, maybe their parents are having to work at night and they're by themselves, they don't have an opportunity to do homework, and maybe in the first 9 weeks, they just couldn't do everything. If they get a 50, and they then get their act together, they're then able to pass the class, versus if you have a 0 as your grade, it's very, very difficult to get out of that hold, even if you do better the second, third, and fourth 9 weeks. So if you do the math, a child who is failing with a 50 will fail the class. If you give them a 0 and then maybe they do better and they get a 70 and a 70 or a 50, 50, a 70, a 70, they're able to get out of that hole versus the 0. That's the only reason, but it was at the will of the board to change our student progression plan, and so if the majority of the board wants that change, we can bring it back to you.
I think I'd like to see if there was a way to even, I don't know if it needs a workshop, but really just dig into, has that really benefited students? Are they actually learning, or is this something that where kids are taking advantage of it? Because I understand that there are circumstances that it could be helpful, but from the cases I've seen, it's more kids take advantage of the fact that they can just kind of squeak by and then try a little bit at the end and do decent. So,
If I can weigh in for just a minute, because I do remember, I probably, Member Ferrand probably gets tired of hearing me say, yeah, I was thinking that too. But I do think if we could, not right now, but set aside some time just to walk through this, because it has to do more with the scale of our grades. So if we had like a 0 to 5, as opposed to what we have, which is 0 to 100, it would make more sense because you could catch up. But the scale being from 0 to, anyway, it's a mathematical thing that it took it took them a little bit of walking through examples, more than we have time for right now. But let's carve out some time to walk through that, okay? Yeah, because I just like, no, this is not okay. You should get a 0. But, all right, we'll come back. But at this point, Member Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea to workshop that. I think it's been several years since that decision was made, and there's always questions that keep coming up about it.
Yeah, I'm foggy even. It made sense to me, but
Yeah.
I'm a little foggy on why.
Mm-hmm.
But I know when we got done, I was like, oh, yeah, but I can't explain it.
Right. I have a quick question about the notification in the interview, which has always kind of been a sore spot for me anyway. But just because I am not comfortable with, and I understand we are allowed by law to interview students and get all that, but on our own. But it just still makes me uncomfortable that we do that without them having parents there to be a part of it. So my question is, why did we add the language for students in grades K through 2 that administration will make every attempt to notify the parents before any disciplinary investigation, before the student participates? Like, why are we just doing that for K through 2? I thought we had discussed this previously at one of our previous board meetings when we talked about the code, and we had decided that administrators would make an effort to contact parents for all students before they interviewed or before they started an investigation. So I'm just wondering why we changed it, why we've added grades K through 2 only. And I'm on page 9.
It's not listed anywhere else, specifically a grade level about contacting parents before you talk to a student. We heard you guys, we listened to parents about kindergarten through 2nd grade, and we felt the need to make sure the schools are attempting to contact the parents of those little ones to be there on the phone or come in person when they speak to those students.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if I'm alone on this, but I'm really uncomfortable with us interviewing students without at least trying to reach out to parents first. And my only this is my thinking, right? You got a 10-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 12-year-old. They don't think when they say things, and then they're in there talking to an adult, and they very well could say something incriminating that actually could be criminally incriminating, you know. And it, just like if it's your own child, I mean, like anybody, what's the one thing of advice you have is like, don't talk to anybody unless you have a lawyer present, right? So I just feel like we're just throwing that out the window when it's children, and someone needs to be there to, I don't know, or at least we need to make the attempt to have someone there, if we can. I'm just uncomfortable with not at least trying to reach out to parents if there's a serious situation and you're investigating, you call a kid in to question them. That's my concern with that one. My other thing, and I had written down, I agree wholeheartedly with bringing back and talking about allowing Orange County virtual. And I was wondering if it might be possible for us to even get some data as to how many level 4s we had in the last year that did enroll in positive pathways and did not. Like, how many students did we lose? Because I would imagine there's quite a few students that when they're expelled or when they're excluded and sent to positive pathways, the parents chose to pull them and go to Florida virtual or homeschool them or send them to a private school or something like that. I would imagine that there's a decent number of those. So if we could maybe get some data on how many that was, that might be helpful for us to help make this decision. But I think I totally agree with everything Member Gallo said. I think that the consequence is that we are excluding them from attending school with their friends, from their extracurriculars. That is a consequence for their behavior, and that is the discipline. I don't feel like it needs to necessarily be you go to positive pathways is the discipline. I think being at home by yourself, doing school on your computer as opposed to at school every day with your friends is discipline as well. So I don't have a problem with offering both those options, and I think that would be really smart actually for us to look at.
Member Vanos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll just start there where Member Byrd left off. I do agree with Member Gallo, with Member Byrd, and I think pointing out again that the punishment is not being in school. And I think it's also important to think about how we want to characterize positive pathways. Like, it's not like it's a punishment, but it's also like a way to kind of help students get what they need and kind of get back on track. And so I think that should be a part of this conversation too. I would be interested, along with the data that was requested for positive pathways, also interested in the students who attend and what their, what their discipline record or whatever is like after attending positive pathways. I'd be interested to see that. Okay. I also wanted to agree with Member Byrd on what she said about reaching out to parents to be involved, even if the student is above second grade. And part of that reason is I think it would help with the later process also of discipline, of parents feeling like they're more involved and they understood what happened. And I just think it just would help with actually all the process, just to make it a little bit more clear to the parents. So I do agree with Member Byrd on that. Okay, and then on page 3, I also wanted to, I'm so agreeable today, wanted to agree with Member Ferrant regarding the written note that parents can have. Could we just do an opt-out form? I don't know, if I might have missed that. Could we just do that instead of having parents write a note? So if you don't want your child to participate in the disciplinary investigations, rather than tell the parents that they need to send in a written note, could there just be a form that they could sign if they don't want their child to participate in that? because I can't imagine any parent who would like actually write a note just based on reading the code.
Well, we do get a lot of parents too that send that into the principal, and it's printed out and it's kept in the student's discipline file. I'm just not sure if they opt out, how we get that form. Because I don't know if there's a lot of things to opt out on a particular form.
Mr. Palmerini.
I need to ask some clarifying questions just so I understand where the board is on this. Are we talking about the student who's the alleged perpetrator? Are we talking about all the students who are alleged witnesses to these potential incidents? Are we talking about contacting every student who's a witness?
I mean, I thought it was every student who's a witness.
All right.
So-
So
Maybe-
we're going
go
to need
ahead.
to get you numbers because literally at a high school, I'm going to go low on, but let's say they have 40 referrals in a day, but so that's at least 80 calls. Now, you're asking, and I also need clarification, you're just asking that we attempt to make contact. If they don't, you're not asking us to wait to interview the students if the parents, they can't reach the parents. Or are you?
I just think that I guess so there were two separate things. I think this is, and I believe if you could go back to page 3, sorry, I don't have a copy of it. I didn't get a hard copy of this, but I think it was just participating in disciplinary investigations. I think there were a lot of parents who don't necessarily want their child to participate in them. And so I do think they should have the ability to opt out of participating. And if the school needs, and this is a bigger concern. I have real concerns about using witness statements in the way that we're using them against students who have been, who are attempting to be, who have been alleged to have violated the code of student conduct. So I think for me, it's just part of a bigger issue. But I do think that parents should be alerted if their child is going to be interviewed as part of an investigation.
No, alerted is fine because we can call, we can, leave a message. I think the question is, are you saying that we do not begin the investigation until we have gotten consent from the parent that we can talk to them?
That's what I would say. I'm curious what the rest of the board would say.
So that's going to delay completing the investigation. So in our code, whether the student wants to write a statement or not, and the student's writing a statement is their way of explaining what happened. If they choose not to write a statement, then the school, the discipline team, we don't have their side of the story. But the investigation is going to take place with other kids that will write statements.
Okay, and I mean, I guess that's sort of the issue I have is like we're sort of basing a student's alleged violation on something that other students are just writing.
But they are witnesses to what happened.
Okay, okay. It sounds like I'd be curious to see where other board members weigh in on this, so I will just put it out there. I just have concerns with this process, but. Okay, on page 33, this is just brief. This is about the Parent Square email letter notification, just making sure that on that Parent Square notification, there's a very clear subject line about what the notification is about, because I would guess that maybe not every parent opens every Parent Square email. So just as a process matter, so that they know. And then also, okay, page 36, it's talking about the DTM process, which you said takes 10 days. So during that process, are students in school?
For most level 4s, kids are suspended for 10 days. We have our DTMs within that 10-day period. I would say the area administrators do a great job in trying to have the DTM prior to the 10 days. So if the kid is returning to school, they get back to school sooner. but the DTMs occur within a 10-day window.
And so then that overlaps with the suspension, or is that in addition?
No. So you get suspended for 10 days, and the discipline team meeting will occur within that 10-day period.
Okay. So it overlaps. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I also had a question on page 13. And this was not a highlighted one, but it's about the destruction of property. And it says something about willful and malicious intent. So if a student does something stupid and let's say just like throws something in a classroom, not out of like intent to harm, but just throws something and property gets damaged, are they still, and it's not related to hate, it's literally like they toss a ball across the room and they shouldn't have, but it's not intending to hurt anyone or hit a teacher or hit a student. But let's say they hit a, whiteboard or something and it is destroyed. Would that be included in this? Or do you actually have to have the intent to destroy something?
So based on the definition, it should be willful or malicious. So they should be having the intent to do harm.
Okay, so if they're just goofing around and something happens, it would not be implicated under the code.
Based on the investigation, no.
Okay, thank you. And then just one last question I have, and this is kind of a part of the conversation about positive pathways and the consequences that students get for certain violations of the code. Do teachers do they see the consequences? Like, do they see the discipline ladder when they, let's say, write a referral?
If they request a ladder, the principal should share the ladder with them.
Okay, but they don't actually, so they don't just get a copy of it with the code?
No.
Why is that?
It's given to the principals, and when you say get a copy with the code, I'm not sure if all teachers get a copy of the code unless they print the code out themselves.
So when they write a student up, can you then explain kind of the process?
So when the teacher writes a referral, they complete the top portion, the student's name, student number, and the description. Then it goes to the administrator to determine the consequence based on the investigation.
I think it would be helpful for teachers to see what the consequences are for some of the violations of conduct. Is that not allowed? No. Okay. I think that would be helpful for teachers to just have that, or educators to have that at their disposal.
Chair, may I?
Mr. Palmerini?
So under the statute, a teacher, this is 1332, a teacher has the ability when they're writing a referral to make a recommended penalty under the code of conduct. So they can say, for example, this is the hideous example I always give. The kid was pencil fighting, so I recommend that he gets suspended for 10 days or expelled, right? So they can make that recommendation. The principal then under the statute has the authority to either implement the teacher's recommended penalty or tell them, I'm not implementing the recommended penalty and here's why. So teachers have the ability to recommend what they think the appropriate penalty for an act is. And then the principal could say in this case, listen, you recommended a 10-day suspension for, pulling the cell phone out on the first offense, right? Under our discipline ladder that the district has developed, that's not the appropriate consequence for a first offense of pulling your cell phone out when you're not supposed to have. So teachers have the ability to give recommendations on that. That doesn't mean the principal has to follow them. The principal can act in accordance with the discipline ladder. Now, discipline ladder is obviously a document that's a public document, and it is something that folks can get a hold of if they want it. But that is the process statutorily and how it's laid out is teacher makes recommendation, says this offense occurred, I recommend this penalty. Principal says, all right, I'm finding the offense occurred, but I'm not giving this penalty, or I am giving your penalty. Sometimes they hit it spot on and that they are giving the penalty.
No, I appreciate that description. Oh, sorry.
There's no reason why we can't at the beginning of the year just send a link to all of the teachers that has the code and the matrix. It's not a problem.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
All right. Thank you, Member Vanos. Member Douglas.
Okay, I just would like a few clarification on a few points that you gave us. The one on I think it's 3EE, I'm not sure. When a child has a meltdown and what are the consequences for that? And you were saying that we won't punish him because...
So there's a range of consequences for 3BB, physical aggression.
Okay, so
So the range of consequences can be alternative class, it can be a behavior contract plan, it could be detention, it could be passed from 1 to 10 days. Level 3s also carry a suspension from school, 1 to 10 days. So there's a range of disciplinary responses for all level 3 offenses. And there's a range for each one. A level 2 has a range of offenses, a level 2 has a range, level 3 has a range.
So if a child has a meltdown in the middle of the classroom, for example, does he have any, what are the consequences of that?
It would
It's just-
depends on
depend
the-
on what he says?
It
or
depends
what
on
he
the
does?
investigation.
Okay, okay. And if a child, for example, during that meltdown, says something like, I want to hurt myself, or I just want to do something, is there any follow-up on this to make sure that maybe a counselor?
So if
called or
a child is having a meltdown, there's an investigation, and from the investigation, there's several things that could happen. That child would be referred to counseling. Also, depending on if the child has IEP, the IEP team may get together and look at putting some things in place to support that child.
Okay, good. Could you also repeat what you said the SR wanted to add regarding unwanted visitors in schools? Something, I'm not sure. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Which one? Oh, it's 3EE?
Yeah, I think that's the one.
So
Yeah.
3EE is a campus security violation. It's intentionally allowing someone to have unauthorized access to the school campus or a specific classroom. I'm going to give you an example. I go to Boone, but my friend from, I got a friend and they're mad at one of the students at Boone. So I am going to prop the gate open, okay, leave a little pebble so they can come in and fight the person they're mad with at Boone. And if that happens, that could be violence or some sort of criminal activity. And in that case, then it's going to be a level 4 offense.
Okay, that was not already in long time ago? I mean, is that something new?
The
I thought it
criminal
was-
activity, violence, and to make it a level 4 is new.
Oh, really? Okay, all right.
But
thank you.
the 3EE, campus security violation is not new. Basically, we're adding it for clarity to be specific. So when this does happen, students, parents can't say, I didn't know.
Okay, legally, people know. That's the reason why.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Just one more time. Parents will get notification through Parent Square, email, and what is the third one? So there were 3.
Regular mail.
And email.
Email, regular mail, and parent
Oh,
square.
regular mail. Okay, okay. All right. And talking about Member Ferrant, when you were talking about the 50%, as a teacher, I felt the same way you felt. I think that would be great if we leave that to the teacher's discretion because they know their students. Okay, you know what the student is doing every day. You have the students that we know are trying really hard, but difficulty getting that 50%, even that 60%. And you have kids that do absolutely nothing or don't even come to school. and get the same grade. And that's how always hurt my heart, because I'm like, why do I have to give 50% to that kid? He never showed up in school, never. And then you have the other kid who's always here, but struggling. And I still have to give him the same grade. And I think that's a great, we need to have that discussion, because it needs to be done. Thank you so much. Thank you for clarification.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Member Douglas. Member Felder.
Oh, it's a lot, but I just kind of want to kind of piggyback on what I heard regarding the first thing I want to talk about, the positive pathways and opting out of that. And I agree with many of my board members who said that we may need to do some type of work session to kind of discuss the pros and cons of that. Because the bottom line is we want children in school, even if they misbehave, they're going to misbehave, but we still need them to participate in the learning process. However, if you have done something that is punishable, you need to deal with the consequences. That's part of the education of life. When you do something that's not right, you have to be willing to deal with the consequence, because you're not going to always be able to get around it. And life teaches you that. So you need to deal with the consequences. However, I'm not a proponent of one who just continuously keeping kids out of school, you know, and they're not getting, and there's no learning taking place. That does disturb me. The other point I want to talk about from a teacher perspective, I remember the first time we got the information about grading. You have this student who's come to school every day, working hard as they possibly can, and they're not going to get above a 56%. You've tutored them, you studied with them, they have the plan, they have a lot, but they're not really getting what they tried. And you have a student who doesn't come to school at all. And I had a friend of mine tell me his daughter, we getting nearing up to graduation and into the school. She has 13 assignments missing. She told her mom and dad, look, I can knock it out in one night. I go to bed at 2 o'clock and I knock them all out one night. And the parent told me he's upset with the teacher, that the teacher would allow her to make up those 13 assignments. And I recall when we were in the COVID stage, I remember Dr. Shanoff came to my house and said to me, Miss Felder, stop giving the children assignments. I loved Canvas. Because I was sitting there looking at, I was at home, and I was just coming with all these assignments. I was so creative, and I forgot those children had 6 other classes. That did not bother me. And he said, don't give them any more assignments. Stop. Because it was just too much. You know, and sometimes it is too much. However, it is something to think about, the fact that a child comes every day, works hard, and you have this one student that doesn't come or sleeps or skips, and then they just make it up, the 14 assignments, and the teacher is there trying to get all those grades in, and I don't know whether they do it. Sometimes they may not. They just say, okay, you did it, check, check. And I mean, what is that accomplishing? So I think we do need to kind of revisit perhaps the 50%, but then on the other token, I have mixed emotions about it. A child that has a 35%, a 25%, a 12%, they will never be able to get a passing score. They can't make that up. So I try to be creative as a teacher by having extra credit, extra assignments, not extra credit, because they need, I had my students understand that there's a difference between extra credit and extra assignments. Extra credit is for those students who can do what's already required. Then you can do extra credit, but I will give you another assignment or extra assignment. But extra credit is not for students, in my opinion, who cannot do what's already required and already what's assigned. You don't get extra credit. Those are for the students who have done what has been required, and you got time, or you want to move that B to an A, or that 90% A to a 96% A. That's who I give extra credit to, but I'm not teaching in the classroom anymore, so I don't know how to do it, but that's how I do it. You don't just get extra credit because you don't do the assignment. No, that's a 0. and I can give you another assignment, but no extra credit. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is when students have been caught in a disciplinary action and the interview with the students. Teachers, I think superintendent said something about 80 referrals or something. It is very taxing for a teacher to stop, to call a parent during that day and they're trying to teach class. Then after school, there's meetings. If they have a extracurricular activity they're sponsoring, it's difficult for them to stop right then and call a parent. You're trying to teach class. That's hard. However, I wonder, could you at least give a phone call to the parent when you have a student in your office, in the disciplinary office, and they should have numbers where somebody they can be reached to say, we're getting ready to interview your child on this particular action that he or she was accused of doing. I am not an advocate of interrogating students, number one, without the parent's permission or the parent being there. And children, as Member Bird said, especially elementary school children, they'll say stuff and they don't realize what they're talking about. Now, fully grown high school student, they know what they're talking about, but you still should give their parents the opportunity and the right to know that you're questioning them. And then if we do that, it needs to be done across the board with all races of children, all children, whatever abilities that they have or whatever their sexual preferences are. They need to have equal protection under the law. They need to be treated equally. But I do believe that I would like to know that parents are aware and they've given the administration of the SRO permission to ask the question. And I have said in past, maybe it's a good thing I'm not in the classroom no more because I might be in professional standards, but I have said, if you're being questioned, you can tell the SR, I refuse to ask that question till you ask my parents' permission. You can't question me. I tell my students all the time, if you're called in and you feel like you don't want to ask, tell them, say, I refuse to answer that question till you get permission from my parent. And then the parent is on a speakerphone and they have it that way. I am an advocate of that because I think children need to be protected as long as possible while they're children, because the world can be quite cruel. But I will say that I like positive pathways, and I do not want, if we're going to put them in a virtual school, our Orange County virtual school, not Florida virtual, because we lose money, doing that. But again, we probably need to workshop this. I probably need to hear more size of it. If you do the punishment, beloved, you need to pay the time. You do the crime, you need to pay the time. You have done something that was wrong, you need to be punished. How you're punished, that can be debatable. You know what I'm saying? But you have to learn. You can't do that. But I definitely believe in letting the parents know and getting permission before you question children. And then this thing about witness statements, I understand sometimes the consequence has occurred, the disciplinary action has occurred at a time where there's a very gray area. And I know why they ask students for witness statements, because the administration, they need to build a case. They need to see whether this is something that really needs to be investigated. Also, sometimes teachers have been accused of things, and there needs to be witness statements. And sometimes children lie. Sometimes adults lie. So, I think that we need to handle this kind of thing with witness statements. I think we need to handle that very gingerly, very cautiously, because you do need to know why you have a reason to question the action of the person that has committed a particular action. So you need some witness statement. But again, in closing, I'm the last person talking, so I always feel rushed. But I don't think you should question children without the presence of their parents, either physically there or on the phone. I just think the parents reserve the right to know, what are you asking my child and what did my child do? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Felder. I paused in the middle of the presentation because there were a number of people who had questions and I thought it might be more efficient. We still have the rest of the presentation to go. We have several speakers queued up for round 2. I would like everybody to pause and let us get through the presentation. I would like clarification from the superintendent in terms of where we are with the first part of the presentation, what's outstanding that you need direction on. I will weigh in on the one thing that I know I came back in the middle of, and that was virtual, Orange County virtual versus Florida virtual. My preference would be Orange County virtual. Has nothing to do with the money, but I think that being able to keep the student, their records, their environment as part of our own, I think re-accepting them back into the classroom, I just think all of that will work better. So that's my vote or 2 cents on that. Dr. Vasquez, other things that we need direction, or do you have enough, since I did step away and I apologize for that?
We have agreed to some of the changes. There's some things that we're going to bring back, including OCVS as an option for positive pathways, and we'll flush that out and see if we need to put some restrictions. For example, students that are attending OCVS are able to go on campuses and attend events. Students who have committed a level 4 offense are not. And so those are things that we can bring back to the board with recommendations on how we may be able to offer OCVS. We've agreed that we're going to make sure that all of our teachers have the code of conduct as well as the matrix. We are going to need to have more conversation around the board members' requests to not speak to students unless the parent is there physically or on the phone. I believe that the board is not aware, and you shouldn't be, but you're not aware the volume of referrals that are received at a school level, and what that will mean if we cannot speak to students unless the parent has consented. And additionally, I think that'll pose some issues with the timelines that we are required to follow. Some of them are statutory. So we will come back after we've had more conversations around it and see
yes.
if
My one question for you is timeline you just mentioned. Where are we on the timeline again?
we're scheduled to have another, I
Okay.
believe, we had planned on another work session
Okay.
on this based on the feedback we got today. So the team is prepared for that, and so it'll be in a couple of weeks.
Okay, so we do have time for that. Great.
And I'm sorry, and then
go
the
ahead.
whole separate issue that has nothing to do with the code of conduct, we will come back to the board as part of our review of our pupil progression plan.
Okay, great. Okay, so we don't have to land the plane on a number of these issues that there's still some debate on. Member Gallo, you wanted to say something before we move on?
Yes, I just have a quick suggestion. I know that at the top of the referral, students can opt out. They could refuse to do the witness statement. So I'm wondering if the easiest thing to do would be alongside that box that a student can refuse without parental consent. Like I will make a statement, but not until you get a hold of my parent. Like maybe we could just put a box there and they could check it. That way we're not burdening staff, but then a child wouldn't be intimidating to making a witness statement if they saw that they could check that box that they want their mom or dad called.
Member Gallo, I honestly think, since we're going to bring it back anyway, let's talk about it then. Yeah, because I mean, I know, and it's crossed my mind, and I've had the argument back and forth with myself. And then there's like 3 sides of me that are arguing at the same time. So all I can say is if we go down that path, you guys are going to have to listen to me for a while. So let's bring it back so we can devote our time to that. But thank you for the heroic try. All right, the rest of you all, we're going to come back after we finish presentation. Okay, and Dr. Vasquez, thanks for clarifying kind of where we are. So we can move forward.
So we're going to turn it over to Sarah Kapeske. She's going to talk about the recommended changes for ESC and 504 section.
Good afternoon. I'm going to be looking on our closer screen because I forgot my glasses, so I can't see up there. Thank you, Ms. Ames. So the first part is the title. We're just removing that term for services, just to shorten the title a little bit. I don't think that that part is needed. The second change you'll see on this page just says that this section only applies to students who qualify under the IDEA, not Section 504. There's another section for 504, so it's just notifying them if your child has a 504, you need to go to that section and not this one. The next paragraph is actually information taken from the suspension section and manifestation determination section that we currently have. But it basically just states that students that have disabilities can still receive disciplinary referrals for violations of the code. However, their disability is taken into consideration when determining the consequences that the student will receive. In addition, a student with disabilities may receive out-of-school suspension for up to 10 school days without consideration as to whether the student's behavior is directly and substantially related to the student's disability. However, after these 10 school days, the school is required to hold a meeting to look at the correlation between the student's disability and behavior in question. That language is actually taken directly from the IDEA and State Board of Education rules. We thought it was important to add there because we do have several parents, advocates, and even attorneys that come forward and say that if a student has a disability, they should never get a referral. That's not necessarily the case. We do have reporting requirements to the state in order to report specific incidences that occur on our campus, but we do look at their disability when we're talking about a consequence. So that's where their disability is taken into consideration. The next part just clarifies under the suspension section that if it's a student with a disability under the IDEA, again, this section only applies to those students with IEPs, not Section 504 plans. And then down further, it's just some clarifying language that we added in there on that. So if you could go to the next page, thank you. We updated the manifestation determination section to add review at the end. We lovingly call it an MDR meeting, so you may have heard that in some of our conversations or possibly in emails you receive from parents, but that's just to align with how the USDOE and the State Board of Education term this type of meeting. And then the next sentence, you'll see some redlining there, but it's really just simplifying the sentence. It's not a substantive change. There. So if we go down to the bulleted list, the section at the bottom that you see that is crossed out is actually added as a bullet above. And so if the behavior is determined to be a manifestation of the student's disability, the team must consider whether a functional behavioral assessment or FBA and or BIP needs to be developed, or if a BIP has already been developed, whether the BIP needs to be modified to address the student's current behavior. And that is a requirement under the IDEA. And then there is one sentence in that strike through that we removed completely, saying that the procedural safeguards must be provided to the parents or guardians at the manifestation determination meeting. The reason that this was removed is because a lot of times they're provided beforehand. So I didn't want schools to be confined to that they only can provide it at the manifestation meeting. A lot of times they do provide it before, they provide it at, and sometimes they provide it after, and a lot of our staffing specialists actually have a link on their emails that links you to the procedural safeguards as well. So there's many ways that we get this to the parents. If you go to the next page, please. And then in this section, again, just really simplifying the language, removing that where it says provided at the manifestation meeting, again, for those procedural safeguards for the same reasons I just explained. And then adding in that next paragraph, it's important to note that pursuant to the IDA, if a student is placed in an interim alternative educational setting due to a violation of the code, and then the parent or guardian appeals the decision, the student actually remains in that interim alternative educational placement. So that means, like, if a student receives a level 4, it's determined not to be a manifestation of their disability. They get assigned 2 positive pathways. They remain in positive pathways if the parent appeals that manifestation determination until the outcome is determined by a hearing officer. If you go to the next page, please, thank you. So this is the Section 504 portion of the code that I was referencing earlier. This one already has a reference to the IDEA, so we did not have to add that here, but it does add in the same statement that we added under the IDEA section, that students with disabilities may still receive disciplinary referrals. And then instead of citing the IDEA, we cited Section 504. Down in the bottom, again, just clarifying that this pertains to students with a disability under Section 504. And then here, again, updating that manifestation determination to manifestation determination review throughout this portion. And then also adding in that Section 504 manifestation meetings are not governed by the IDEA, rather they're governed by Section 504. So Section 504 actually doesn't call it a manifestation determination meeting. We've coined it that because that's what the US DOE calls it, but it's not the same type of meeting or same regulations that they have underneath the IDEA. Actually, under Section 504, it's called a placement meeting, but we didn't want to confuse parents, so we still call it the manifestation meeting. And then at the very bottom, again, under the appeal section, same thing where we just updated the language there a little bit, letting parents know that if the student is placed at an interim alternative educational setting, that the student will remain there should the parent appeal the decision until the outcome of that decision changes, or if it remains the same, then obviously they would stay in the alternative setting. That's all I have.
You guys have any questions for Sarah?
Is that the end of?
End of her section,
ESC 504.
the 504 in ESC section.
We do. Do we want to take questions now?
Or we can
I would
move on.
say, let's keep moving.
No problem. All right, page 49, just another minor change where we remove firearm and weapons because any object can fall under safe harbor. Now we're going to go to page 50, which is dress code. As Dr. Vasquez stated earlier, from some of our community meetings, meetings with teachers, meeting with cabinet, wanted a little clarity when it comes to dress code. So only one minor change, and it's going to be at the bottom. But what we did, we tried to update and clarify under number 2. So we said tops must have straps, which is already there, and provide full coverage from armpit to armpit. And then we added spaghetti straps are not permitted. Midriffs and sides may not be exposed, including when arms are raised above the head, and hemlines must be no shorter than mid-thigh. So the only thing that was added, that wasn't there before, was the spaghetti straps are not permitted. If you scan it down a little bit for me. And then we remove 11. And 11 basically said the principals, individual schools are expected to use the state and district dress code, but principal at each school reserves the right to determine the appropriate dress for their school. We remove that so we can have consistency from school to school. All right. Page 54. We've added at the bottom of page 54 under search of an individual, refusing to participate in a search may result in a disciplinary action. Page 56. At the request of Access and Opportunity, we removed A2S. We no longer have the A2S programs, but I do believe we still have the Keeping It Up program. that's out of Edenville. And A2S was the alternative to suspension centers. Towards the bottom of page 56, under restorative practice, we've updated the language to align with the International Institute for Restorative Practices. So it states, restorative practice is a research-based approach that positively impacts behavior and student climate, creates a sense of belonging, minimize harm, and support student learning while cultivating students. Practices are designed to uncover the root causes of conflict and create a safe space to facilitate conversation, to minimize harm, repair relationships, and identify solutions. Towards the bottom, it also states restorative practice conflicts, resolution circles with a person harmed and a person who caused harm. Some restorative methods may include community building circles and conflict resolution circles. Page 62. We've added a section titled The Use of Micromobility Devices. OCPS permits students to park micromobility devices on board property during school hours. Riding is not permitted at any time on board property, including sidewalks, courtyards, athletic fields, courts, grass areas, or other pedestrian spaces on campus. Detached vehicle batteries are not permitted inside school buildings at any time. To protect the health, safety, and welfare of students and staff, parking micromobility devices on board property is subject to the following rules. Upon entering board property, students must dismount all micromobility devices and walk them to their designated area. At the end of the school day, the student must walk their micromobility devices outside of the board property before mounting. OCPS is not responsible for the loss, theft, or damage of micromobility devices brought onto board property. Students who violate these rules may be subject to disciplinary action and may lose the privilege of bringing personal transportation devices onto board property. For the purpose of this code, a micromobility device includes bicycles, e-bikes, scooters, skateboards, hoverboards, and similar devices used for individual transportation. An e-bike is an electric bicycle with a motor not exceeding 750 watts and a maximum assisted speed of 28 miles per hour. We do understand this was added for Cabinet's recommendation. The information may change due to pending legislation. All right, and page 68. So on page 68, under our early reentry process, what we did, we kind of flip-flopped steps 3 and 4 to accurately say what happened. So on step 3, the reentry plan is submitted to the superintendent or designee for approval before the student is permitted to return to the student zone school or the other school as deemed appropriate by OCPS. If approved, the director of discipline would notify the parent or guardian, and that's step 3. On step 4, there is a reentry meeting with the school, the parent, anybody the parent wants to bring, OCPS staff, contracted veterans or volunteers, and that this reentry meeting, the student they have a contract stating they're going to abide by the code. So we just made sure that step 3 occurred before step 4 in the code last year. I think it was reversed. So this is going to conclude our updated recommendations to the code.
Thank you, Dr. Joyner. All right, Dr. Vasquez, should I take comments and questions from the board at this time? All right, starting with Member Gallo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do have just a few questions. On the disability, and I've had this conversation before, so I know the answer, but for the benefit of others that may not know the answer, I've always struggled with referrals with children with disabilities. And I know that they go through a manifestation hearing and all that, but we have to send the assessor form or the referral form up to Tallahassee. So can you just briefly explain which form has identification like attached to it to where the state would be housing that information, and then which does not have any identifiable traces that gets reported to the state? Because I know that there is a portal that this information goes into. Okay, John can recite it off the top of his head.
So Rule 6A-1.0017 is the Cessor Rule. And the Cessor Rule requires the reporting of incidences up to the state. That is the portal that does not have the student identifying information. What is reported up there is incidences. And it says that we have to report incidences regardless of whether or not it is the child has a disability or not. What we do under Cessor is we take into account the child's disability when we render our punishment, right? So that's all contained within the Cessor Rule. The one that gets identified, and this comes out of Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and the policy choices made by the legislature after that is the threat management portal. That's the one where we have to identify who the student is and the threats that are made. And what that does is to help give a sort of like a unified look at all schools that this student may attend to say, oh, okay, this student has previously engaged in threatening behavior, so they can make sure that they are dealing with that appropriately. But with respect to Cessor, that's incidences, not the identity of the student. With respect to threat management, that's the identity of the student.
Thank you. I appreciate that, John. So I guess my next question would be, if it's a Cessor offense, which means it has to get reported, it went through the threat management team. I can think of an incident recently that this happened, and then we determined it not to be a cause of manifestation. It went before the magistrate. The magistrate said, yes, it is. It was, the incident was caused by manifestation. What happens? Is the incident with the identifying information still housed up at the DOE, or because it was truly a manifestation, can you pull that back? Or do we send something up to the DOE and say it went through an arbitrator or whatever, and it was found to be manifestation, and then that's linked to whatever we sent up to the DOE? How does that happen?
So the mechanics of this and how this actually works, I don't get into the day-to-days in my particulars. And Sarah, and I'm looking at Sarah and Alkivia, and they're looking at me like they don't get into those particulars either. I would recommend that if we have an overturning by a hearing officer that says something was a manifestation and contrary to what we said it is, that we would reflect that up to the state portal.
Okay.
And I think that should be a practice that we do. That, like I said, that is a situation that we have rarely encountered.
I understand.
Yeah. But
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great if we could just follow up and let them know that it was a manifestation. When we do manifestation hearings, is like the IEP and the BIP and everything that's associated, or the 504, if it's a 504 that's associated with the student, during that hearing, is that reviewed to ensure that the IEP and the BIP plan was done with fidelity? Like, do we look at that? Do we look at the IEP and the BIP plan to ensure like the school did follow the IEP, they are following the BIP plan when we do those manifestation hearings? Because I hear from parents a lot is like, yes, it was a manifestation, but this happened because the IEP wasn't being followed, or there was a sub that day and the IEP wasn't being followed, or the BIP plan wasn't being followed. Like, that comes up a lot when I have ESC parents reach out to me and their child's in trouble.
Sure. So there are, sorry. that wasn't on. There are 2 questions that the manifestation team must determine when they're looking at whether the child's disability is related to the behavior. And so the first question is it directly and substantially related to the child's disability? I mean, that's where we're going to look at teacher input, we're going to look at grades, we're going to look at any evaluations they've done. We're going to talk to the psychologist about what that typically for that type of disability, how does that manifest in students? Does it manifest in this student that way particularly? And so that's where we're looking at the whole child for question 1. To answer your question is question 2, where we ask, is it the school district's failure to implement the student's IEP or 504, which resulted in this behavior? And sometimes, I'd say rarely, but sometimes the answer is yes, because it could be something where there was a substitute on the day that the behavior happened and they didn't know that they had to do these 5 calming strategies before the student reacted. So it is rarer that question 2 is a yes, because our schools do try to implement IEPs and 504s with fidelity, but it does happen once in a while.
Okay, I'm just glad that we're looking at that, so I appreciate
absolutely.
that. And then on 54, when we're talking about the backpacks, and maybe this is a Mr. Palmerini question, but I thought that if a child was on our campus or on one of our buses, that we didn't have to ask permission to search their backpack, that we could automatically search their backpack. Has that changed to where now we have to get permission? Or did I have that wrong?
No. This section was more to inform students that a refusal to consent to the search could lead to disciplinary issues. With respect to student searches and backpacks, we have to have what's known as reasonable suspicion under the law. If we have reasonable suspicion to believe they have contraband or a weapon in there, we can institute the search. It's not the probable cause standard that police would have. It's a little bit lower standard. But this consequence is just in there to fully inform students, because they can make the argument, well, I didn't know that if I didn't consent to the search that I could be subject to discipline. This is making sure that they explicitly know that if they don't consent, they can be subject to discipline.
But I guess so my question is, if we have probable cause, we don't need their consent, correct, to search them?
If we have reasonable suspicion, we do not need their consent to search, but sometimes kids will just say, you're not going in there. And if they do that, then
there's consequences.
There's consequences for it.
Fabulous. And then my final question is about the restorative practice. I'm a huge fan of restorative practice when implemented correctly. I've seen the research and the results that it can provide for our students, especially with, I never get that word right, but doing the offense again, that recidivism. There it is. So I guess my question is, how are we going to implement that? I did see that some of the strategies that were listed that they would utilize, but are we going to ensure that we give the teachers the tools that they need, and more importantly, the training that they need in past to ensure that they can administer the restorative practices?
Yeah.
Great question.
So thank you for that question. We do require that someone at the school and the administrative level is trained in restorative practices. And that's every 3 years it needs to update. And we used to do that on a Canvas course, and this year we implemented face-to-face training that we also invite teachers to, which is voluntary training. And so our numbers have increased significantly in the amount of people trained, but every school is required to have someone trained in restorative practices.
And that follow-up question, Chair?
Yes.
And that would typically be an administrator, or would administrators send like their past teacher? Because that seems like that would be the person that would need to be trained.
No, because it's a consequence, part of the code of conduct, where it can be part of a consequence or part of a restorative program, it has to be an administrator.
It does. But can the administrator request that the past teacher get trained?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay, great. Thank you, Member Gallo. Member Ferrant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that I was noticing, at the end of all the levels, so page 12, 16, 23, and 31 have those little boxes that show all the different areas. I know the district is discussing, budgetary cuts and the such, and the safe coordinators. Okay, so I'm trying to find one of the pages so I can just read from it. Let me go to 31. Okay, and it says in there, it will say, where is it? I can't find it. Anyways, it says, oh, here we go. Safe/guidance referral. So if that position is removed, then that would need to be removed from here, correct? Or is there, maybe that's a different individual that would be,
Yeah, we will find out what individual will replace in the safe person so we can refer the student to that person.
okay, perfect. Just a thought as I was looking through it. As far as dress code, again, can you explain to me, because I think it's good, our dress code, the policy all looks good, but schools enforcing it is the part that I always feel like we have some trouble with. How is it enforced at the school level? And
Yeah, I can, Madam Chair, may I? So we have this conversation all the time. First of all, schools have varying staff that are available or not available to enforce the code, the dress code. And so we remind the administrators, like if I'm at a school and I'm seeing students that are, you could see their midriff, I will say something about the code, but they have a very difficult time enforcing it because they don't have personnel available, and a child may come in the morning and have a jacket, and then it gets hot. Well, not even change, it gets hot, and then they take the jacket off, and now they're out of dress code, which is why I was looking for a little bit more leeway in some of the items in the code. But I do recognize, like, for example, the spaghetti straps, right? Well, one could, if you don't leave the definitions that they put in there, you could have somebody coming in with a bikini top. Because technically, right, the bikini top would have straps, and if you're not worried about the midriff. And so it really is difficult. We're going to work with our administrators to be more consistent. One of the things that we have found in some cases is that schools have added things to the dress code, that students can't wear maybe a certain type of shoe, or students can't wear jeans. And so that's why we've taken away that statement so that it is more consistent, and we'll work on the training. And you have, teachers that care very much about the dress code, and then you have other teachers that I want the child in my class learning, and I'm not going to address the dress code, because by the time the child comes back, they may have missed most of the period of the day. So it's something that we're going to have to continue to work through and have conversations, but it is staff availability to enforce the dress code.
okay. And then by taking out the one line, how does that affect principals or schools who have put in place the uniforms? They're still allowed to do that, or is that something we need to just add there, like schools may?
So we don't require, you can't require a child to wear a uniform. Any school can work
Oh,
through.
you got it. I didn't see number 10.
there.
You
Yes.
got it. Okay. I
So
missed that.
That's
one.
always an option
Thank you.
that they can do. So that's
No,
not
no,
an issue.
that's good. No, I'm glad that it says it in there. I just wanted to make sure that wasn't being pulled out, and that is all I have for right now. Thank you.
Member Vanos. Oh, I'm sorry. Member Byrd. Member Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I'm going to just focus on the dress code for a moment. So I understand that there are concerns that you know, girls, let's be honest, it's girls, are wearing very revealing clothes at school. I understand that. I've heard it from a few employees. But as Member Ferrant said, this is really a enforcement issue, and it's a school decision as well. I mean, as the superintendent said, you know, a lot of them don't have the staff to do it, and they've got bigger issues to worry about, right? As they should. I mean, our job is not to parent these children. If a mother or father are okay with their daughter leaving the house wearing what they're wearing and we think it's inappropriate, I don't think that that's our job. I think it's our job to educate them. It's not our job to parent them. And as we're all sitting here wearing denim because we are in solidarity with not victim blaming women for how they dress and the effect that it has on other people's behavior, I think that's exactly what we're saying when we're pulling a girl out of class saying what you're wearing is distracting or makes other people uncomfortable. I am completely against it. I always have been. I think our dress code was fine the way it was. We had the pictures exactly the same as it was last year. What it said before was tops had to have straps and clothing must cover the body from one armpit across to the other armpit and down approximately mid-thigh. See the picture. Tops must have straps. Undergarments must not be viewable. Rips and holes need to be below mid-thigh. That's been our dress code for the past several years. If that's not what's happening in schools, that's not because of the dress code. That's because that's the decision of the school or their enforcement. It's not that it's not in the dress code. I strongly advise against doing anything with straps. If you guys all remember, we were having such an issue with, you remember the 4-finger rule on the straps and the 2-inch rule? It was a nightmare. And we heard from more parents of girls about finding straps on the top that were wide enough. And it was such a thing that when we switched over to just the line, tops must have straps, I got so many emails and so many people stopping me. Thank you finally for doing that and taking out the 4-finger rule and all that stuff. So I have a real problem with doing any of this. Even adding in the midriff thing. I mean, have you guys been to a football game and seen the football players with their bellies hanging out? I mean, I'm just saying, if we're gonna be, there's so many other things to be thinking about here. And I really think it sends the wrong message. And I don't want to see us pulling girls out of class and so girls are missing learning when we're telling them that what they're wearing is not appropriate. I just don't think it's our place. I think that's a parent's place, and if the parent doesn't have a problem with it, then it's not our job to do that. And that's just how I feel about that. And I'm very, very firmly feel that way about that. So I would propose not making any changes. I think our dress code is fine the way it is. It's schools' decisions, how they enforce it. And if parents at that school and staff at that school are having a problem with how the kids are dressing and it not being enforced, then I believe it's their job to bring it up to their administrators and ask for stronger enforcement if they want stronger enforcement. But I don't think that our code needs to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Byrd. Member Vanos.
Thank you, Member Byrd. I am in complete agreement. Although I would say I'm not in agreement in that I actually don't think that the code is good as is. I think, and I think especially on this day, this is about not victim blaming for sexual violence, and we are doing that. We are making, Member Byrd is right, it's making girls feel ashamed of their bodies, adding scrutiny to their bodies, and I just don't understand why we're doing this. I mean, let me just ask a question. Why did we add in spaghetti straps are not permitted? Like, what was the reasoning behind that?
I think Dr. Vasquez mentioned girls coming to school with bikini tops on. So if we add the spaghetti straps not permitted, that would eliminate certain type of tops there, man, where their midriffs are exposed.
Okay, but if the midriff can't be exposed, then they can't just wear a bikini top to school, right?
Also, okay. Undergarments should also be shown when you have on spaghetti straps. I mean, their undergarments are being exposed.
Well, I mean, what if a girl was wearing a boat neck top and you could see her bra strap? Is that not allowed either? I mean, right, what if they have a sports, I mean, the more we add language to this, the worse it gets. I mean, we don't want to see your underwear and we don't want to see your private parts. I don't understand why we need more words than that. I feel like that covers what we really don't want to see. I mean, you know, if there's an issue, if like literally someone walks into school wearing a bikini, we can talk to a parent about that. Or I would just say this, I mean, how many students do you see on the weekends like wearing a bikini around? Like, not that many. The more words we add, the more I think we are bringing just judgment and scrutiny to girls. We're bringing judgment and scrutiny to certain body types. And I think there's, discriminatory practices, racially as well. I have a problem with all of this. I think we should simplify. We don't want to see your private parts. We don't want to see your underwear. I'll give you an example of something that happened. This happened a couple of weeks ago, a senior who is showing up to school regularly to take her advanced math test, was sent away by the teacher. She was dress coded because she could see part of her belly. So she had to leave the class to go down to discipline to change, and then had, half the amount of time to take her test. This is a senior who's showing up to take her advanced math test. This does not make any sense to me. I don't know, like we allow students to be tardy and not literally come to class with literally no consequence. But here, we have people showing up to class, but we're sending them away because you can see their belly. This doesn't make sense. There's teachers telling middle schoolers in the cafeteria that she can see their butt cheeks. Who's looking at this? Like, why are they looking for that? This is just inappropriate in every way. There was a coach who told a student that her shorts were too short and it left nothing to the imagination. Like, this is a problem with the people, not with the students. Like, a student should not be forced to change what she's wearing for the comfort of an adult or a boy who might be distracted. I think we have, this is so problematic on so many levels. I have a big problem with this. I will also add in, this makes no exception for sports. There's sports practices. I'll give you an example, track and field. It is common to run in a sports bra. Like, it's not because you're trying to show off anything. I'm 47. I mean, I wear a sports bra. I don't want anyone looking at my belly, but it's comfortable and it's hot in Florida. And that's just part of the sport. And we've had coaches telling girls that they cannot run in a sports bra. That's literally the uniform of the U.S. women's track and field team. And they're being told that they can't wear that in school to practice. So aside from the general dress code, I think it's also not right that this is also being applied to sports, to athletes.
Madam Chair, may I comment just so you can?
Yes.
So I just want to point out that the dress code takes in feedback from a variety of individuals. And not that I want to bring this topic back up, but just as there are strong opinions teachers have about zeros and 50s, they have just as strong, if not stronger, opinions about dress code. And so they will tell you they don't want the child in the class where they are distracting others. There are children who feel distracted or feel uncomfortable when body parts are showing. I'm not saying it's right. I can tell you that my direction to them was pretty much what you said. I don't want to see your underwear. I don't want to see your body part. When you bend down, I don't want to see anything I'm not supposed to see. And then there was feedback from a variety of stakeholders that don't necessarily agree with that. And so I personally like the less is more, but that is not the feeling that our teachers have. They are sending them out for dress code violations. It is not consistent. I think Board Member Byrd was very accurate in saying that that's an enforcement issue at our schools. It's very difficult to monitor, even from the principal's perspective. And given all of the issues they currently face just in monitoring safety, they're not going to pull somebody off that is maybe doing supervision to then be able to deal with the dress code violations. And so what I would like to get a feel after everyone has spoken is, do you want us to just revert to the language that we had before? I do think that the language about schools being able to tweak it has caused some inconsistencies. I mean, I was at a school where students over the summer, bought clothing, and then they come to school the first day, come to find out that they changed the dress code on them without letting them know, and now these kids couldn't wear what they had purchased over the summer. And so we are planning to come back to you, but I just want to remind you that we have a very wide variety of families and teachers who are in our schools who may not share our individual preference for dress code.
I hear that, and I appreciate that, and I understand that they may not share that preference, but I don't think that it's appropriate to take it out on a student. Your comfort is not as important as a student. I mean, how do you think a girl feels when the first thing she walks into a room and someone makes a comment on her body? Do you think she's going to be able to focus for the rest of the day? I hear what you're saying. I know not everyone agrees, but I think we still have to think about the big picture. How is this impacting student learning? And, someone can ignore, someone cannot look at a girl who's dressed in a way that distracts you or that bothers you or that makes you feel uncomfortable. Just don't look at her. That, why are we making the girl change? I think it's... And then I also did want to specifically also point out number 6, that includes the word revealing. I think that is, I don't know why that word is in there, and I don't think it's appropriate. See-through, revealing, or mesh garments. I think it is subjective. So personally, I think more is less, or less is more? Yes, I think less is more. I think we don't want to see your private parts. We don't want to see your underwear. And that's how I would, that would be my opinion.
Member Byrd, it looks like you're back up again, which is, I'm confused. Okay, thank you. That's okay, because I didn't know. Member Salamanca? Okay, that's all right. Member Douglas.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, well. Okay. I was going to talk about micro mobility. Thank you so much for putting that role in. I appreciate that finally we make that decision about the e-bikes and the moped and all that. But again, that's the question that I already asked. What kind of consequences they could face? I know there's a level 1, level 4, but how does it look like? Do they...
So we would have to go back. We wanted to put language in the code until, to have something until it came from legislation. Then we would come back and look at how it would be, what consequences if kids would receive. So we haven't really thought about the consequences if they violated this information.
Okay, so whenever
So when
you
we
think
come
about
back
those consequences,
around,
we can add
we
it.
can
Okay.
add something to the code
Perfect.
for a consequence.
All right, okay. I just wanted to say regarding the restorative practice, I agree that when it's well implemented, it's fantastic. However, when it's not, it becomes a huge problem. And I really do appreciate that you actually do trainings for teachers to, is that voluntary or is that mandatory training? Huh? Voluntary? Okay, because, anyway, all right. Do we have any videos that we can put online maybe that the teachers can look at if they don't want to come to the training or something? So that at least they can look at, or staff, people?
Currently, we do not have that available. We have the training that we offer the administrators, but staff could research if there are, other resources that can be shared online with teachers so that they can at least understand or better understand the value of restorative justice.
And it has to follow the same training, the same, because I'm sure online you have a plethora of things about restorative practice that may not really adjust to what we're teaching our teachers. So just wanted to make a point of that. The other thing is about the dress code. As a teacher in a classroom, I'm just giving you my experience. And I have taught elementary through high school. And I just want to say, we don't want to see, I am not the police and I'm not the parents, but I really don't want to see body parts. I really don't, okay? Sorry about that, but I really do not want to see body parts. And I think we have clothes in order for us to be, there's a certain way, modesty to be dressed. We do not have to show any bellies or any thighs or any high whatever else out there. I do remember having boys coming into my room, and it's not only girls. I'm talking about boys with their pants down. And you can really see down there. I'm like, seriously, I do not need to see that. No. I mean, we have to have a dress code to make sure that we dress modestly and everybody's comfortable, okay? We cannot just turn our eyes because, you don't have to look at it. Yes, I do. It's right in front of me. What else do you want me to do? I have to look at it. I have to look at the kid. So, again, controversy, yeah? But I do not want to see body parts.
Thank you, Member Douglas. Member Salamanca, you're back. You're not back, but
Listen,
you backed up where you were
as a
supposed to
female
be.
student that was in these classrooms during the 4-finger rule, it was incredibly distracting for the students to be pulled out to not get. I remember at the beginning before school started, we would show up to class and like 3 of my friends would be missing because they never made it to class that morning because they got dress code, and it was very disruptive. I also remember being particularly traumatized by how many times male teachers would be like, bend over, show me the thing, like all the testing of like what, like put your hands up so like your stomach is showing or not. And if you're a student, you're just like, it's just uncomfortable because there's all these weird tests on like, is it short enough, long enough? And they'll be like, well, let's like do all the different tests that they used to have on. Like, bend over to see if you can actually see under your shorts or dress. And it's like, that's just so inappropriate. And truly, it was not uncommon for it to happen in middle and high school. And I think from the student perspective, one of the hardest things, and I have that now when I visit our schools, is the hypocrisy of the dress code. Because if we are saying we are trying to teach our students how to dress in a professional educational setting, I understand. I think that is valuable to an education and that there is real value to that. like wear what you would wear to work or to like a place. So I get that lesson, but you can't do that when our own teachers and staff are not dressing like that. But there are no accountability or standards or dress code for our teachers and staff. And so when folks that you as a student, you're getting all this discipline and all these standards and your own adults in the classroom are not following this, like there's some, I'm not saying teachers are wearing the same as the students, but there is still some teachers that do dress inappropriately. And I think there's this part of the hypocrisy that comes with then, like teachers do sometimes wear PJs to school as well. And sometimes PJ day, but it is, and again, it is so arbitrary on what you consider acceptable or revealing. It is so dependent on, I mean, some folks will say, you know, I don't want to have a career in an office in a 9 to 5. I want to go to Hollywood and that's going to be my job. And so I'm going to dress differently than that. So there's all kinds of things that go into it. So I always had a hard problem. Obviously, female students get overwhelmingly picked on for dress code. So like I'm with some of our board members here saying you should have full coverage, right? And we shouldn't see things that we're not supposed to see, like your undergarments. But I think less is more here, especially if we are only enforcing it once again on students and not even on the adults in the room. And it is the adults that are honestly like, why are you staring? It is truly weird. The last thing, and maybe this is a question for you, John, do we need a religious carve out for head stuff here?
Yeah, in my opinion, you do. The case law uniformly gives students the right to wear religious clothing, and certain school districts have been sued when they have not allowed such religious clothing, so I feel more comfortable having it in here than not.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that there's language out there. I don't know what that language needs to be, but I did pick up that there's probably some legal carve-outs that we need for religious purposes. Aside from that, everything else makes sense. It's truly, it's a hard one. I think that we have so many things to worry about. It is unfortunate. Dress code is all over the place in our schools, but enforcement is just not consistent, and enforcement overwhelmingly falls on female students, and it unfortunately gives adults in an already place where there is a power dynamic, power over something that is just unnecessary, I believe, like to the learning environment. But I believe in the parents' rights to be able to say you can or cannot wear that, and I don't think it's the role of our teachers to be deciding what is appropriate or revealing, because that is very arbitrary. So that's kind of our stand on dress code as well.
Okay, Member Salamanca. Well, all right, let me, before I dive into the issue of maybe what's appropriate and not appropriate, I looked at shoes, and I don't think we have a definition for shoes. I did notice that one of our schools has a definition or excuse me, a restriction on K through 8 that their shoes, they can't wear thong shoes. I'm so sorry, I don't know what happened here. That might help. I believe they can't wear thong shoes or backless shoes. So I bring the shoe subject up because when I was in high school, I came to school with shoes that they were sandals and they didn't have soles. And I got called into the principal's office for violating the code. And I did point out to him that the code did not require soles. And we had an interesting debate. I was pretty much an A student, so I probably got away with more than most. But we did agree that I would not wear soleless shoes, again, as long as we made sure that we included in the dress code that shoes had to have soles. So all these years later, I just kind of feel like, since we're going to be specific about thong shoes, that maybe, I think it's a good idea to wear soles because it's a safety issue. And so for what it's worth, I'd like to see a definition that includes shoes should have soles, just in case we ever find ourselves with a somewhat obnoxious high school teenage girl who wants to debate the point.
But soleless shoes are not safe, right? Because you could step on glass, you could.
No, I said without a sole.
Right, but
Yeah.
the definition is that shoes shall be worn at all times and should be safe for the school
Oh.
environment.
Oh,
And the following shoes
I think
are
you got
not
it.
acceptable.
Okay,
Now,
okay, I
we
think you got it covered.
I do.
Safe.
But that
Good.
is exactly why I wanted to take out the statement about principals being able to make it more restrictive, because there are some that don't allow certain types of shoes.
Right, exactly. Okay, thank you. Thank you so I can walk away from that not feeling like I should have known better. With regard to clothing, that whether it's our girls or our boys, I do think I think social norms when it comes to clothing have changed over time substantially. But I still think that there is a general norm. And at this dais, we will all disagree on what that norm is, which is somewhat obvious. I think that Member Salamanca, your point about what is appropriate attire, I was sitting here and I was nodding and agreeing with you that I think part of what we are trying to instill and teach our students is what's socially acceptable. And I do agree that it shouldn't be two different standards for boys and girls. But I also, to your point, that if we have a standard and we have teachers that aren't complying with that standard, I have a huge issue with that, because you can't set a standard, you can't be a role model. And I think teachers, that's a part of what they are. They should be role models. Our children should look up to them and aspire to be like them. So if we have that problem, I could see that from the superintendent's face that I know she would not be okay if she was aware. I'm sorry, pajamas, when it's pajama day, and I did go to school on pajama day, my sleeves were down to here, my pajama pants were down to my ankles. So that would be entirely different than lingerie. But so I don't have that issue with pajama day when the pajamas are, I'm afraid to use the word revealing, but I don't know what the other word is. But I think that we have to set the line somewhere. We're drawing the line at a minimum at private parts and underwear. For me, I would draw the line at a different level. And my line would be that it would be the attire, I don't know. I don't know exactly how we define it. And that's why I thought when Member Byrd took this on, I think it was your first year in office, I remember you were sitting down there. For whatever reason, I remember exactly where you're sitting, and I remember how important this was to you. And I thought we did a pretty good job landing the plane at the time. So I think for me, I'm good with where we are. I will have an issue if we don't have some sort of a standard. I have a huge issue if we have male teachers or even female teachers asking students to bend over. I mean, I think it should be readily apparent whether it's a problem or not. And if you have to ask somebody to bend over, then it's not a problem. If you're asking somebody to bend over, then I think we need to be looking into why. And so that's all I've got to say on that. If that's at all helpful.
Yeah.
Please, jump in.
And so I do think that teachers have become little less intrusive in asking about bending down and stuff, just because of what's happened since you graduated, what, 5 years ago? No. 10, right? Yeah. Yes. So I do think that they're not, I mean, and in fact, I think that's why we see some of the inconsistencies, is because they don't want to be blamed for saying something that could be misconstrued. We do have in the teacher contract about wearing professional dress. Anything that would go beyond what's in there would have to be bargained. I will tell you that principals do address if teachers come in and they are dressed in a manner that could be, that they're exposing body parts. And sometimes that's primarily women. But they don't, so much go if they're pajamas. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't seen teachers in pajamas except if it's pajama day. So I have not seen that. But I have seen teachers that, I kind of pause and like, you went to school, but I don't know the circumstances. And so I try not to judge. So I do have a question of the board, because we really are very, very far apart. And so I gather, and I could be wrong, that the majority of the board was in alignment with the code of conduct as it was prior to the changes that we have proposed. I know that there's at least one board member that would like to make it less wordy. I'm not sure that the majority of the board is there. And so as the team goes back, I would like direction regarding, do we want to keep it the way it was? Because there's very minimal changes that was made. Or do you want us to take a stab at the no body parts?
So since I am queued up, let me respond with my thoughts after that. So we did spend a lot of time on this. Where we are, I cannot recall having a complaint from a single parent in the 7 years I've been here about attire of our students or the dress code. And I think that's pretty remarkable. So to the saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I think we're in a good place. I do agree that if all of us picked our perfect place, we wouldn't be here. I'd be, more restrictive, except for, the shoe thing, that was a long time ago. And others would be less restrictive, and we could debate this for a long time. My preference would be to, with the exceptions of a few things that have been brought up, I would leave it where it is, since it doesn't seem to be creating a problem. That's my personal weigh in on this. Next up is Member Gallo. And I think we're going to want feedback from each member of the board on this issue before we move on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So my thoughts, like I used to get calls about my daughter all the time. One time she was actually wearing my clothes. So I was like, are you kidding me? That's my tank top. Like, come on.
Ah, God.
Talk about an awkward conversation. Just the AP calls you to tell you that your daughter's out of dress code compliance. And my response was, yes, she's wearing my clothes. Anyways, that was a funny story. And he didn't know how to respond. He started stuttering. So I kind of felt bad for him. He's a friend of mine, so it's okay. I hear what everybody's saying about we don't ever want to body shame a woman. We don't ever want a girl to feel like that she's body shamed. And I'm not a big fan of the spaghetti straps, because it is so hot in Florida, and as long as you're wearing spaghetti straps and the rest of you's covered, I mean, I understand maybe not tube tops, because I do see a lot of tube tops at school. But some of them are like long. They're not showing anything, so I don't know if that should even be an issue. But I'm not, like, if you have a spaghetti strap and a little bit of your bra showing, you can't go out in public without seeing that. Like, you can't go to Target or anywhere without seeing that. And I do think that it's hard to enforce, because I'm at schools and I see how kids are dressed, and schools would literally spend their entire day enforcing these dress codes, and there would be a lot of learning loss. And so I'm not okay with that. And then I know that cheerleaders get special dispensation, they can wear theirs, but their skirts are short. Like, their skirts are, I know they have things underneath them, but they're very, very short. So what kind of message are we sending that, oh, well, if you're a cheerleader, you can do it because it's a uniform, but you can't if you're not a cheerleader, or if you've seen some of the dance uniforms, swim team. So I do think that we need to be careful. And I think, like, if you look at men, especially on their 6 on mesh shirts, jerseys, football jerseys are mesh. Can you not wear a football jersey to school now? Because that's technically would be considered mesh material. No, it's not. Well, I guess if it's not your team, it's distracting. But so I do think that we need to be careful. I do think that less is more. And, like, you have boys that wear these long tank tops that have, like, these armpit holes that literally go, like, down to their shorts. Are we not going to let them wear those? Like, according to this policy, they wouldn't be allowed, because that's not armpit to armpit if you can look through the armpit. Like, if you're looking through and you can see it. And so I don't know. I do think less is more. And I think that if we said we don't want to see anything inappropriate, I understand teachers are probably concerned. I don't necessarily like going on campus and seeing how some of these kids are dressed. Like, I'm like, ooh, I don't always like how my kids dress sometimes. And so, but they're adults and they get to dress the way that they want to. And I don't see, when I'm on campus, a lot of teachers not dressing well. I see a lot of them wearing, like, skirts, like skirts or skirts like you would golf in or play tennis in. I do see a lot of them wearing that. But if you're in elementary school and you're on the ground with kids and it's hot, so I don't know. I do think that less is more, unless we just want to, implement dress codes across the county, which, by the way, would save a ton of, like, as a parent, I would have so welcomed dress codes, because taking my kids shopping and fighting to what they could and couldn't wear was a real pain. Whereas uniforms, they are what they are. But I know that's not going to happen. But that's just my 2 cents on the dress code.
Yeah, so you're not comfortable with remaining the way it was. You'd like us to revise it so that it's like, not this, before what we had last year.
I'm fine with how we had it last year.
Okay.
With the chair, I haven't gotten not one complaint from a parent based on how it was.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Member Felder.
Thank you. As a teacher, even if it was 7th period, if you're out of dress code, they used to call me the dress code lady. The whole school called me that, because I felt like we are an educational facility and we're in the business of teaching across the board. And I wanted my students to understand the difference to what was appropriate and what was inappropriate. Now, some of my students, and they made a very valid point, we had some PE teachers, and they would say to me, Ms. Felder, is that appropriate? I say, listen, that's PE. They're going to wear shorts. They have to be out in shorts. Then I also had some male teachers used to say that some of the girls with the very, very short dresses that would sit on the front row. Some of them would not have underwear on. Oh, babe, I'm going to be transparent. I ain't going to hold nothing back. And he said, Vicki, I said, okay. So I was a real strict, I was one of those teachers that they knew they would tie something on themselves when they came in my classroom because I would send them right back out. So Ms. Fellows I said, I don't care. This is some press. I don't care. You're inappropriately dressed. However, but then you may have a heavy student that may have on clothes, and if that's all they can afford, it may be tight, and it may, look seductive, but that's all that child can afford. So I think you need to use wisdom as you deal with children with dress codes, because some boys, those slides, I hated them because I knew that it was going to be hazardous for them in the long run, because sometimes they will fall and slip, and then we get sued as a district because they fell because they didn't know how to walk in those slides. And some of those people, the guys, had them because they couldn't afford certain things. I had a little girl in my classroom. She it was cold, and it's not normally cold in Florida, but sometimes we get 30, 40 degree weather, and she had on shower shoes. So I asked her, I said, baby, what size shoe you wear? She told me. I said, you like Chucks? She said, yeah. And the next day, I bought her a pair of Chucks. I bought her some black Chucks so she could remember there was a black teacher gave it to her. So she liked the Chucks, and she said, Miss Felder, I appreciate this. I said, baby, I just want you to be comfortable. And she said, those are the only shoes she had. So I couldn't send her out of my classroom with shower shoes. I just bought her some shoes. And of course, to thank me, she slaughtered a deer and bought me some deer sausage for Christmas. But that's what she could do. She was a hunter. But I'm just saying, I think we should keep a dress code. But I'm glad we don't have the 4 fingers across. And sometimes, spaghetti straps, sometimes children, that's all they have. My concern used to be with those vicious leggings that were so tight. God, it was so vulgar looking. And I remember, I know we don't do this now, but I remember at an Edgewater game, they put the child out and the parent, because they both had on those. They say, you can't come to the game like that, you're inappropriately dressed. And I was like, oh my God. So sometimes we do take it a little far, but I just think if we could, I trust that we should be able to make basic judgment. It is Florida, and it gets very, very hot here. And I think I would never tell a kid to bend over. Let me see. That's wretched. I would never do that. But I know one of my students transferred to L.A., and she wrote me and said, Miss Fell, they have no dress code here. We can wear bikinis to class. I said, ooh, we can't do that in Florida. I don't care if we are by the beach. You can't wear bikinis because you have to be fully dressed. So I think that I would be concerned with just, are you covered properly? I don't see your body parts, and you're dressed appropriately. But again, when I think about body shaming, I think with some of those heavy chicks like me, and the clothes might not fit loosely, and to tell them, this is the best they can do. This is all they have, and to send them out. It may be short because they can't pull it down because they're too fat or whatever. I think that makes them uncomfortable. At the same token, I am also considerate of our male teachers and male administrators. They're men. Some of these girls, it's just inappropriate. So I believe we need to keep a dress code, but I think we should just use reason and rationality as we deal with what is appropriate and what is inappropriate, because children can wear things that are revealing. And I just think, I would use the example to them, and they just holler. I said, okay, tomorrow I'm coming in here with a teddy. They said, what? I said, I'm going to be half naked. I'm going to dress like y'all dress tomorrow. Well, Miss Fallon, I said, why? You dress like that. Why can't I dress like you dress? But I just think that we need to use wisdom. And some things, you can look at a child, and determine that this is the best that they got, and let them stay in class so they can learn. Some children are doing stuff that they know they should not do. Then you have parents who come and cuss out administrators and tell them that you don't buy their clothes, I buy their clothes, and this is what I want them to wear. They're going to wear it, and my answer to them would be, then you school them. You educate them at home, because we have a dress code. So I am a firm believer in dress code because I saw it, I lived with it as a teacher, and I think children need to know the difference between what is appropriate and what is inappropriate. Notice I did not say what's right or wrong. So what's appropriate and what is inappropriate. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Felder. Member Farran.
I won't drag this on. I think the way it was before is just fine. I think it's very clear. It's really just the enforcement of it that I see the kind of issues that we have in school. It's really just the egregious ones where you're walking in and there's actual, like the shorts are so short that the butt cheeks are right there. If a boy wore shorts like that, we would call them out on it. But boys don't typically walk around with really short shorts on. And if they do, they shouldn't be, and we should call them out on that. And it's really just common sense. And if a teacher has to question, like, okay, is that or isn't it inappropriate? Like, don't worry about it. But if a kid walks in and they're like ready for the club, it's just politely and maybe discreetly. I think the other thing that I hear a lot from the board table is that I think what people don't want is for the child to feel shamed in front of the class and being called out in like, hey, what are you wearing? And I'm writing you up right now. Like, there's ways to handle it. And whether it's, you know, as soon as class is over, you've taken your test and you say, hey, can you come real quick? And, you know, do you have something else you could wear that really isn't appropriate? And I'm gonna have to write you up, or can you just call your mom real quick and have her bring something, or run to the closet and have, you know, put something else on. But when we do it out of kindness and love and we show kids respect, they'll understand. There's an understanding. It's just when it is done out of like, yeah, like there's just, and I agree. I think there's teachers that they get in the role of they have some authority and then they want to use it. And I think every kid has kind of gone through that at some point. And so it's just common sense. And I like the way that it was. Maybe that last thing, if Dr. Vasquez, if your team is seeing that there's some inconsistencies across the table and you want to remove that last line out, I would be fine. I think it's number 11, where it was like they have discretion. If you're feeling like that's causing some issues, I have no issues with that being removed.
Thank you, Member Farran. Member Vanos.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Member Farran. I'm fine with removing number 11. My personal is and as I listen to people, I really think the key is nobody wants to see private parts hanging out or underwear. But so my first, I would prefer that we do change the dress code to reflect what we actually mean. But if the rest of the board is not on board with changing the dress code from the original that it was before, I would at least ask that we make an exception for student athletes, such that when they are like running or on swim team or whatever, that they can wear what is comfortable for them in their sport. And then third, I would just ask that if we think about revisiting it, or maybe we should even do it now, is to have like some real student input on the dress code, like an actual organized group of students providing input. It'd be interesting to see the variety of responses, but I think it'd be important. And then I think the last point I would just make is if there is a continued strong desire, like I would like to see, is it based in evidence? Is there better outcomes when students are wearing certain clothes? Because if there's not, I don't know why we would do it. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Member Vanos. All right, I think we're in a clear place. All right, thank you. Member Farran.
I think number 5, where it says specialized courses may require specialized attire, such as sports uniforms or safety gear. So it's in there. That's from the previous one. I feel like that kind of reflects it.
Yeah, the only thing, when we're specifically when we're talking about swimming, I mean, you put your swimsuit on when you're going to swim, but you you don't have to wear your swimsuit all day long, right? No, I know,
No, no.
okay, but I just wanted, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure we were
No, I think
clear that we weren't saying,
No, I think
Okay.
what Board Member Vanos is saying is different than
Okay.
5, because it says that they could wear it with the principal approval, like during the day. And I think what Board Member Vanos is saying, let's say, like, if you're running and it's hot in Florida, that the dress code will be different because they are probably going to run in runner shorts, which are shorter, or the tops that are, I mean, some of them are sports bra, but some of them aren't sports bras, but they look like a sports bra, but it's hot. So we can add a line in there that makes the allowance for the sports. That would be separate, because 5 is the cheerleaders wearing the uniforms.
yeah, okay. 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 Anything else? Our next meeting starts at 3? Food in the back. Okay, well, this meeting is now adjourned. We'll see everybody for the communications meeting at 3.